moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Okay, yes, I appreciate this.
It's 150 degrees outside. Yeah, I know you guys are getting it worse. We really are just getting into it.
We've had so many we had like the hottest day in 10 years last week. So
yeah. I want to just stay inside, but that's not the case. Apparently, I have other things to do. So.
Well, we are able to beat the heat every once in a while when we do our homework for this show.
That is true. I have my buddy who hates movies. He cannot stand like any movie we talk about. He like just craps on. And he was like, he lives out in Arizona. He just moved out there. And he's like, I went to the theater because it was $8 and I got to sit in the AC for 2.5 hours and I watched Maverick. He went just to get out of the heat.
I don't like how the media is lately putting Maverick against I don't even know what it's called. Top Gun, Maverick, whatever it is.
It's Top Gun.
How the media is setting Tom Cruise against Buzz Lightyear. That seems to be the headline of all these things that I'm seeing, and it's unfair and it's unwarranted.
You don't think it's fair?
No.
Why?
Because it's ridiculous. The media has created this ridiculousness in the first place, but we'll get there. I don't want to jump in.
I didn't realize that it was a competition. If the two of them like faced off against each other.
No, it's like, Maverick is doing so much better than Lightyear because of what Disney has put in their movie. It's total BS.
That's just bull. That's bull. That's just, and plus Maverick's been out in the theater for a month now. Lightyear just dropped last week.
Well, before we get there, do we have any news?
We do have some news, and I'm going to stay with that space theme since we are talking Lightyear. The Prop Store, which is this auction house in the UK. Are you guys familiar with this at all? They basically auction off like actual props from movies, television shows, scripts, wardrobe. It's pretty extensive. Anyways, they just sold a used X-Wing fighter model from the original 1977 Star Wars. That is A New Hope to all you newbies. And it sold for $2.5 million.
Wow. A
little piece of plastic spaceship. And I am so jealous. I could not. I mean, what would you do? Disposable income that some people have. But they were able to, I guess this was in the ILM archives. I don't know how this stuff actually makes it out, because that is one thing Lucas really sat on top of, was keeping a lot of these props and a lot of these things that now go on tour to like the Smithsonian. A couple of years ago, the Smithsonian had an entire exhibit with, the original Millennium Falcon model, which is massive. This thing is like 6 foot across. Costumes and the robots and all that stuff. But it's now in the hands of a private collector. This is Red Wing Leader.
So this is not Porkins.
This is not Porkins. No, so this was from what I understand, this was repurposed. So it is 2 different ships, but they were able to verify and authenticate the fact that it is on screen. It was originally, I think, Luke's ship, Red 3, and then they changed it to Red 5. They just added 2 more stripes on it. And it was meant to be blown up. There are models that have like little holes drilled into them that can put explosives. But this survived. They were guessing maybe 500 to $1 million, and this thing went for 2.3. I'm sorry, 2.3, not 2.5.
I wonder if they're flippers that buy these things that are expecting to sell it for even more than what they bought it for.
Listen, you already double what the expected. These things aren't meant to last. They tend to disintegrate. This thing's made out of plastic and styrofoam.
Have you ever seen like these shows, like these toy shows or whatever, like these movie prop collector shows. Like these people who collect this stuff, they put it behind glass in like a climate controlled room.
Yeah,
it's gonna last forever.
It's now, but when at the time, I mean, a lot of this stuff gets reused. I mean, we'll talk about this when we get into Buck Rogers because a lot of that stuff came from Battlestar Galactica,
which is
so
crazy.
they reuse a lot of this stuff. But this was probably sitting in some archive, some drawer somewhere.
So do we know anything about the buyer of this?
No, as far as I know.
Is he married?
Not anymore.
Is he or
not
she
anymore.
married?
You charged what on my credit card? For all we know, it's going to Rancho Obi-Wan out there. Steve Stansweet's got the world's largest Star Wars collection, and he does have some props. Or it could go to the new museum that just opened in LA, where they just refurbished Bruce, the shark.
Yes.
The only remaining one.
I would travel to California just to see that. I'd be done after I'd see that. There would be nothing that could top that.
Right. Why is this any different than someone buying a Van Gogh painting? It's a piece of art that exists in our pop culture. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And we didn't talk about it, but Colin Cantwell, the original designer of the spaceships for Star Wars, Lucas went to this guy. Ralph McQuarrie gets a lot of credit for, taking his original concepts and fleshing them out and making them look more like what we see in the movies. But this guy, Colin Cantwell, he just passed away like a month ago. And he was getting some name recognition. He kind of came out of the woodwork there. So this is as much in his honor as anything else. Very interesting. It's not coming to my house. Enjoy it. My other news item, Quantum Leap. Anybody watch Quantum Leap?
No.
We know of it, though, right?
Oh, of course.
Okay. Well, if there's any Quantum Leap fans out there, they should get excited because it's getting a sequel reboot treatment from NBC. Apparently, a pilot has already been shot and a series has been ordered. Don Belisario, who is he was the original creator. He's coming back as executive producer. And from what I understand, they're saying no word on any original cast members returning. There were 2 cast members and one's dead already. So Scott Bakula, right? That's the only. Dean Stockwell passed away last year. There was two returning characters. That was it. So I don't know. I'm assuming it's probably going to drop on Peacock as a new series. And I think it ran 5 years back in the 90s.
I always mix it up in my head with that Jerry O'Connell series.
Oh, Sliders.
What was that called? What was the Sliders?
That was John Rice Davies was in that. That was
another one I never watched.
That was a fantastic
I remember seeing
show.
a few episodes of that one, but for some reason when you said Quantum Leap, that was what I thought of first, and then realized that wasn't the right thing.
No, I'm actually surprised now that you bring up Sliders that has not been rebooted, because that has a lot of potential. They really kind of dug into the multiverse, multiple versions of these characters every time they went to a different Earth. And after a while, I think they even brought in Jerry O'Connell's brother, who kind of replaced him. But that was a fun show. I really like that. So there you go. Ernie Hudson is also attached to this new version. So I guess he's not working on any Ghostbuster stuff that they set up. At least
no, they're still waiting to hear back from Bill Murray on that sequel.
Don't hold your breath on that one. So that's all the news I have.
All right. So let's get into Lightyear.
All right, let's go.
Now, the reason why I was going off on the mini rant at the beginning of the episode is that I think that the media has kind of stacked the cards against this from the get-go, because the big story about Lightyear is that there's a same-sex kiss in this. And suddenly that becomes the story. That becomes the movie. And I'm guilty of it too. After reading 10 articles saying the same thing, when I think of Lightyear, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And so now, of course, that they've done this, and when you see the movie, it's just treated as, it's like a 2-second scene.
It is a throwaway scene.
But not even throwaway. It's just like the normal course of life, right?
Correct.
Which is what something like that should be. Like, it shouldn't be made a big deal. This is normal.
Correct. It wasn't. Yeah, it was
just something that happens in the movie between two characters, just as if it was a husband and wife, a married couple.
Yep,
shares a sedate kiss, and that's it.
Yeah,
and there's just a little teeny part of the movie, and the media blows it up, and now they're saying, because they've created this mess in the first place, this is why the audiences won't go see it, because they're tired with wokeness. I mean, well, if you didn't draw such attention to this small part of the movie, there wouldn't be an issue at all. I'm sure if nobody was aware and saw this movie, nobody would care.
No. And yet you go back to the 1960s and James T. Kirk can run around and nail every alien in the planet, in the solar system. And
I think that people aren't going to see the movie is because it's not that great.
This you know what? I hate to say, but
here's the thing is that people won't know that until they go to see the movie. So you would think opening weekend, a lot of things open big and then boom, there's a precipitous drop after the first weekend, because then word of mouth gets out. You tell your friends, this is terrible. Well, I'm not going to see it. It was dying to begin with. So when it opened, it was beaten by Jurassic World, which was already in its second weekend.
I mean, for me, there was a couple things like right from the start. I just want to say I'm really missing the Pixar short tradition.
Yeah, right? What happened to that
up as well? Yeah,
you're going back out to the theater. You know, it's been so long. Why are you taking that away from us?
So I was like, oh, the movie's just going to start. There's no short. Okay. Yeah. And then I don't know about you guys, but I hated that title card that came up before the movie started.
Yeah, it was kind of thrown in because I brought this up last week.
Yeah, and I said to myself, Jeff, you have your answer right there.
Because I'm not the only one who's going, how is this like fitting into this universe? And it's like, so originally, right, so this title card just flies out there. Oh yeah, by the way, this is the movie that Andy saw in 1995 that inspired him to want the toy.
But the problem with that is, for me, is that it took me out of the movie for like, I don't know, at least 20 minutes, because all I could think was the conceit of a movie that you're watching is that you're watching a real thing happening.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
And that if you have something that comes up that says, this is not a real thing.
This is a movie
that's happening. This is a movie. It just mentally took me out of the film. To start with.
So now you're watching an actor playing Buzz Lightyear.
Right.
You're waiting at the end like, well, maybe they'll cut back to, the movie coming to an end. And there's Andy with his friends or his mom in the theater going, that was awesome. That was amazing.
And then you're thinking, well, why didn't Andy have a socks doll?
I know. I will tell you right now, I had probably 6 or 7 prepubescent little girls behind me, and that socks robot cat could do no wrong. That every time that cat was on screen, they were losing their minds.
To our point last week, because Jeff was off the rails about this last week. Questioning why, if Andy lived in the 90s and this is taking place in the future, how Andy could know or have a toy about Buzz Lightyear. So yeah, there's a throwaway text at the beginning of the movie where it says, Andy had the Buzz Lightyear toy in 1995. This was based on a movie. This is that movie.
Could the toy manufacturers not get the rights to Chris Evans' voice, and that's why they had to hire?
Yeah, because that's where I was getting at. Like, if you have a movie out and you're going to have a toy that does the voice, of course you're going to want the actor to voice the toy. Right. So it would make sense for Tim Allen to play this part,
right? Because if they were making a movie like this of, say, Woody, there's no way in hell that Disney/Pixar would not use Tom Hanks.
But I think that they really made a mistake here, because I think that there was probably a fairly easy, kind of Deus Ex Machina way to make this film make sense as a real thing that's happening and not a movie. They could have had it be he was a pilot from the past who somehow went through a wormhole and ended up in the future. Like
Buck Rogers?
Right. It could have been anything. It could have been anything.
There are a lot of parallels.
There are like a lot of ways that they could have written in some tiny explanation to make this a quote unquote real thing happening.
Yeah, because you know what? That's interesting, because if you go back to like Back to the Future 3, when Marty gets taken back to the Old West, he uses the name Clint Eastwood, which is funny for the audience. So, right, this could have just been a generic astronaut that gets shuttled into the future, and he was a fan of the toy, and he's like, my name is Buzz Lightyear, and now he builds a spaceship suit or whatever.
Or whatever. He could have been a real person in the past that they made a toy out of because he was an astronaut, and Andy had that toy. And then but this is his story of what happened. He went to, he was missing in space. And he became a hero because he was, never came home. He was missing in action. And this is what happened to him. There are a million things they could have done, I think, that would have helped ground this in a movie reality. You know what I mean? For the audience. And that really bothered me like right off the top. And it took me so long to like settle down and get into the film.
I will say, I will give Chris Evans props because he really does do a good job with this character. But you mentioned like Buzz is not a hero. Like he's the reason that all this thing happens. Like this is a rare miss for Pixar. There is no heart. There is no nothing. There's nothing.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay,
but
there's
it's not the good dinosaur.
I think that there's two problems here. One problem is that they're essentially telling the same story that the toy experiences, right? The toy has to, in Toy Story, the toy Buzz Lightyear has to come to grips with the fact that he's not who he thinks he is, right? And that he can, he has to like be a regular toy and live the life of a toy with everybody else. And here he's a guy who thinks that he can do this great heroic thing. And once he achieves that great heroic thing, his life will be complete. But really, he just needs to like live with everybody else. So it's the same story that the Buzz Lightyear toy goes through. So then you ask me the question, why are we even making this movie? Because we've already experienced this with this character. But the other problem is that, I mean, I think Izzy is a more interesting character, so she should have been the focus of the story. And Buzz is just a character who he's so self-serious.
That's what I'm saying about Heart, though, because his relationship with his friend up front, Izzy's mom, Alicia, that's the heart of the movie. But every time he tries to fix this, he loses 4 years. And like you see that he's like committed to trying to fix this wrong, and everyone else is like, this is our life now, and they just go on and live their life. So spoiler alert, she lives her life, she has kids, she gets married, we talk about the same-sex kiss, it's just there. She just has a relationship. Every time he comes back, you see civilization is just moving on, and he can't get over this mistake that he made.
No, because he has this superhero complex where he has to fix every problem. And that's what he has to get over by, teamwork makes the dream work is basically the message of this movie.
Right. And by the time he gets done, he realizes that I can't fix this because of alternate reality Buzz, which is another whole side story. But he has no emotional connection to anybody except for Izzy at this point. And even then, that's tenuous.
I would agree that I was a little bit preoccupied after reading that opening text. I'm not going to say scrawl because it didn't scrawl. The ramifications. I'm watching a movie within a movie. I'm watching an actor. And then I thought to myself, how great would it be if they went totally meta and had some scenes of them making this movie?
Well, that's what I was saying before. Get rid of that title card. And then at the end of the movie, then you see Andy and his friends in the theater, and then it connects. And then you're like, oh, this whole thing was a movie. But you're right, because, my rant last week with this Tim Allen thing, and it didn't make any sense to me. There was a Buzz Lightyear TV show, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, that ran for years, like 60 episodes. And before that dropped on Disney, there was an actual movie, The Adventure Begins, and the Toy Story toys are watching this movie. And the voice of the movie is played by Tim Allen, even though in the cartoon, it is Patrick Warburton who plays Buzz. This live action movie inspired a toy, which inspired an animated series about that toy. And then the toys watch that animated movie. And I'm like, we're like in the rabbit hole here.
Before we get any further, the overriding story of this is that Buzz and Hawthorne are the two space rangers that are guiding their big spacecraft that they call the Turnip, because that's what it looks like. And it's kind of like a Star Trek mission where they have a bunch of scientists in stasis and they're going into deep space to look for life. Or it was very similar to the setup for Alien Covenant, actually, because they have all these crew members in hypersleep until they get to their final destination, wherever that may be. They investigate a planet, very alien-esque, because
there's a couple alien references.
Yeah, the computers sense life, and it's just like a vegetative planet, and there's bugs. So they are about to leave after they get attacked by the creatures on the planet, and Buzz crashes the ship. It's like does like a Titanic against the iceberg.
Yeah.
As they're pulling away, He scratches the ship against a mountain, and he does damage to the ship, irreparable in the moment. It crashes down on the planet, and they're stuck there. And for the rest of, I would say, the first half of the movie, it's Buzz attempting to get them off that planet because their hyperdrive, and every sci-fi movie has hyperdrive. It's hilarious, but their hyperdrive is damaged. They need a certain crystal, and they're trying to get the materials from the planet to build this fuel crystal. And it's just failure after failure after failure. And every time he does it, time for him goes much slower than time for the people down on the planet. And when he comes back from every attempt, 4 years have gone by for everyone else, but not him. It's like 4 minutes for him. So everybody in his life, including Hawthorne, who was his best friend and fellow space ranger, eventually grows old and dies. So for the second half of the movie, it's Hawthorne's granddaughter, Izzy, who has a ragtag team of her own. And at that point, they have to battle Zurg because he has taken over the planet and the remaining people that are there. So it's not really an origin story. And that was, I think, my first disappointment. Looking at the trailer, you assume you're going to see the origins of Buzz Lightyear, but he's already fully formed. He exists. It wasn't what I was expecting, and not in a good way either.
No, and he's gone for 4 years. Wouldn't you just assume that he's dead and no one else steps up to try and figure this out? They're like, oh, Buzz tried and now he's gone. Oh, well.
I guess not. It was interesting that you said talking about the alien references. I thought there was some big Weyland-Yutani energy in the design.
Yes, yeah. I think actually one of the logos was very Weyland-Yutani looking.
Like the especially the mining equipment.
Yeah.
I thought really looked like alien. There's some fun little characters here. Taika Waititi is Mo.
Can't go wrong with Taika.
Socks, which you already mentioned, the robotic cat. But it all just feels very by the numbers, like enter quirky side characters here, you know, and it does have a nice message for kids, I think, which is, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. That like a mistake doesn't have to define who you are, and that's obviously
but this mistake does define who he is
because he chooses to let
try
it
and
define
rectify
him.
it, right?
Overall, like if you think about, and we talked about this, how Disney has not been releasing the other Pixar films in theaters, but if you think about the last 3 Pixar films, Soul, which was just amazingly innovative, Luca, which was so charming, right, so beautiful, and Turning Red, and then this is the one that they choose to put back in the theaters
because
it's
a Buzz.
It's a brand named, but this could, because of the low turnout and because of the theatrical numbers, this could affect future Pixar, because we do have another one coming out next year called Elemental.
Any of those other movies that Christina just mentioned would have been home runs. They would have knocked it out of the park with any of those in the theater.
Yeah, especially Turning Red.
Yeah.
I thought Soul was just incredible, you know, and I think that is a movie that could have connected with a lot of people.
Well, maybe that's the exception, because I think COVID really threw wrenches in everybody.
That was very early.
Correct.
That was unfortunate, because that was coming out right at that time when everything was so uncertain.
So by the time Luca came out, I mean, they released Encanto in the theater. You know, they could have
pick and choosing.
They could have done it with Luca. Luca would have been a great summer movie last year. Would have been the perfect thing for a family film in the summer.
Yeah. I'm also disappointed what they did with Zurg. You're telling me that Zurg is Buzz? Spoiler alert.
James
Zurg
Brolin
is not like an evil robot.
So he is his father. Kinda. No, not really at all. I did appreciate the fact that the hyperfuel, it basically is dispensed through 7-Eleven Slurpee machines. And I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. But the Zurg is just thrown in there for the sake of saying that we
I really didn't like that turn of events. That was just like trying to ape Empire Strikes Back in an unnecessary way. So are you telling me that when there's like 3 bonus scenes, so stay all the way to the end until the lights come up in the theater? So you're trying to tell me that Zurg is still alive and it's still Buzz inside Zurg? I refuse to accept that. I don't know. Did I blink? Because I thought I only had two trailers or 2 scenes at the end.
The thing about the laser shields.
There was the very smug commander saying laser shields once the bug
as the bugs are bouncing off it. Yeah. And then there was robot at the end that was trying to get them into
the robot at the end, and then the very end is Zurg floating in space.
Oh, I missed it completely. I guess I missed. I got up and walked out at that.
That was after the Pixar,
Oh, see, they got me. I didn't sit long enough. I don't see how this movie inspired Buzz Lightyear the toy. I don't see Andy walking out of this movie going, "That was amazing. I can't wait to get this toy."
I do want to say this is a very progressive film for 1995.
Yes, I was going to say. I also don't think that they would have same sex.
There's a very forward-thinking group of filmmakers there, which is...
I don't see Andy's mom allowing him to see this, to be honest with you. What do you mean a same-sex kiss?
In the end, it just felt okay. It didn't feel, it was like, oh, I was mildly amused, whatever. This is always the kiss of death. When I start checking my watch during the film, about half an hour in, I was like, wow, there's like another hour and 10 minutes of this. And by the way, does anyone else remember when kids' movies were like 70, 80 minutes long? Why does this have to be an hour and 45 minutes?
Yeah, because what they try to do now is make all these kids' movies have action film climaxes where there's got to be like 5 or 6 different action set pieces at the end when you really only need 1 or 2 at most.
Okay, I understand. They're trying to say like the films are for everybody and they're for adults too, but like remember that there's a large portion of your audience that is like around 5.
And they need and they need their nap time.
Yeah.
That is one complaint. If you go on IMDb, there's a lot of people who said, when my kid says, "Mom, when is this over?" That's exactly what you said. It's a true sign that it's not holding their attention. You need to get in, you need to get out.
And Pixar's been guilty of this more than anybody, I think, like taking themselves very seriously and making these very, very long films. And sometimes it works, but sure. I don't think any kids' movie should be longer than 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think that would have done this some service if they had cut some of it out. Wouldn't have erased some of the other overriding problems, but it would have been more palatable. And I agree, the Zurg thing aside, because that did kind of throw me completely, but I wasn't offended by it. It was okay. It was a passable afternoon. My son liked it. Socks, great.
Yeah. No,
of course, love that character.
Steals this movie.
I would say definitely it's the least of all the Toy Story theatrical films, if it could even be considered as one of them.
Yeah, I don't even know. I like I said, I think it's a rare miss for Pixar. It's lacking something, heart.
I think we've talked about this before. Usually I watch a Pixar movie and I'm guaranteed to be sobbing, at some point. And I was like,
no, you just didn't. Yeah.
No, there was that one moment when he does to Infinity and Beyond with the hologram of Hawthorne. I got choked up at that.
I got a little giddy when he actually let loose and he was flying with his wings. I was like, oh, look, he's doing it. Yeah. So,
but I wanted to see him as a space ranger on missions. Yeah. And I didn't really get that here.
It'll be the TV show coming to Disney Plus near you.
Yeah, not really. I'm just not really sure what they were thinking with this. What was their goal? What was the point of making this film? Like I said, when the character arc is so similar to the character arc that the toy takes, I just don't really get where they're coming from. That said, yes, every actor does a good job. Chris Evans is great.
Yeah, I really thought he did a great job.
And he does actually, he channels Tim Allen pretty convincingly. I didn't see a disconnect. I bought that it was the same character as what was being represented by the toy.
Yeah.
And Keke Palmer, who plays Izzy, we're going to see her in Nope in a few weeks. A lot of good performers.
Taika, of course, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
Uzo Aduba as Alicia. I mean, just a lot of great performers, but just not a lot to chew on in this film, I think.
And Bill Hader as Featheringham Stan. I think that was his name.
Such a throwaway.
As he's crashing the turnip, right before, and he's pulling up to try to avoid the mountain. And Featheringham Stan is hanging onto the chair, not even buckled in. Can I help you? What is he going to do if he did say, yeah, you can help me?
Yeah, you can sit down and put a seatbelt on, please.
So they're trying to say that it's Buzz's fault for not accepting this guy's help, who would have been able to do absolutely nothing anyway.
Well, before or after. Yeah. It wasn't like the character showed that he was a G. The cat figured out the crystal formula.
Yeah.
Only took him,
he did. About 70 years.
Yeah.
And why would they take the cat away? He was given. That's Buzz's cat.
Yeah. See, they had to make the general like the bad guy for no other reason than there was no other bad guy. Because
that was like Ripley on the mining colony with Jones. That was another alien connection for me.
Even when Zurg is chasing him, he's underneath the gantries, and Zurg's pulling those metal girders up one by one.
I can't even think of him as Zurg now. It's just like old Buzz. You've taken Zurg away from.
It is interesting that James Brolin is still getting work doing this stuff, though.
It was interesting because we were just talking about him last week.
I know. Yeah. I guess Josh was busy.
Christian Bale was busy.
There you go. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Tim Allen was busy as well. They're doing the Disney Plus Santa Clauses.
Oh, is that a series now?
Yeah, apparently there's a whole family of them. It is probably one of his bigger franchises.
Well, hopefully Martin Short comes back for that.
Jack Frost, was he?
Jack Frost, he
That's
was.
True. I do want to go back to this same-sex kiss just for 1 second, because there was a theater in Oklahoma that made a big deal about this. And now, obviously, in Singapore, this movie was given an NC-17 rating because of this kiss. But
so ridiculous because it's like it's a nothing. It's a nothing.
Listen, well, we're not going to get into women's rights here. Oklahoma, this theater in Oklahoma put up this notice. It says, "Attention parents, the management of this theater discovered after booking Lightyear that there is a same-sex kissing scene within the first 30 minutes of the Pixar movie. We will do all we can to fast forward through that scene, but it might not be exact."
It's literally
censoring this movie.
It's like less than a microsecond. It's a casual.
You could blur it out.
Kiss between two partners, and the fact that people are making it a big deal about it just shows how far this country has not come. But let's not.
Who are married, by the way, because she was engaged at one point.
Yeah.
It is completely legitimate.
Well, it depends on who you talk to. So I will say I'm happy that people were up in arms that this theater did this, and that they did pull down and stop doing this. But I just found it interesting that in this day and age, we still can't deal with this stuff.
Yeah, but violence is fine.
Of course.
I always talk about this. We have this incredibly puritanical culture that says that if you see consensual sex between two adults in a film, it becomes a big thing. But if somebody kills somebody else with an Uzi, that's completely fine. We have some very screwed up priorities. That's a whole other conversation.
It is. So let's end this portion of the show by giving our buckets to Lightyear. I have a feeling that we're going to be relatively low across the board. I'm right in the middle. It was okay. I was disappointed by some of the turns that the story took. A little bit distracted by the movie within a movie aspect, but I wasn't as offended as the media is saying the rest of the country was. So I am giving it 3 buckets out of 5.
I'm getting really stingy with my buckets now because I used to throw them out there. Like I said, this is a rare stumble for me. I just don't. There's no emotional heft or heart to this. 2 3/4.
Yeah, I'm with Jim here. It was just okay. It's just okay. I'm also going to say 3, but I definitely think that if people want to see a great Pixar film, they could watch any of the last 3 Pixar releases.
Any of them.
And get a better experience.
Yeah.
So there you go.
All right, there you go. There's Lightyear. And we're staying in the future with our next feature. Buck Rogers, but we'll talk about that when we get back from the concession stand.
Refresh yourself. It's intermission time. The concession stand is open and ready to serve you.
We are about to witness the takeoff of the first manned rocket to outer space. We pick up the count. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
We're off to visit the planets. There are treats galore in the stars. Venus is loaded with candy, and ice cream is found upon Mars. The soda pop's fizzing on Saturn. When you're thirsty, it sure hits the spot. And Jupiter's really jumping with popcorn that's buttered and hot. But the best of them all is the planet, where all of these treats are at hand. And that is the spot we now head for, our theater refreshment stand.
All right, we're back, and we are talking Buck Rogers in the 25th century. Now, I don't know if I'm the only one that did this, but I know Jeff took out season 1 from his library.
It was the entire series. It was season 1.
The entire series, because I took out season 1, which had the theatrical version of the first 2 episodes. It didn't actually have the TV version of the first 2 episodes. It only had the theatrical.
Yes.
So what I did was I watched that, and then I watched what was on Tubi to see if I could spot the difference.
Wow, you really went all in on this.
I did. Maybe unnecessarily so.
I'm gonna guess on the televised version. He did not say the S word. I couldn't believe it when he dropped. I couldn't believe. I said, did he just say that? Wow.
Now Christina was only able to watch that. If you even did, we did. I'm assuming that you did.
We don't even know.
I did, but I will tell you that no power on this earth could have made me watch the theatrical version as well, or any other episode of this TV show.
I did watch the Gary Coleman episode, Cosmic Whiz Kid.
The one that I wanted to watch, but I didn't, maybe I will now, is the Space Vampire episode, which all the kids were talking about the next day.
See, again, this is where, I know we talked about this before, like, Jim is just a few years older than me, and Jeff's a few years older than Jim, right? Just a little bit.
Yeah, but, that's a nice way of putting it. Thank you.
But somehow, like that few extra years makes a difference with things like this. I was only 5 when this came out. I was not interested in watching Buck Rogers.
No, meanwhile, we were, Galactica came before this. Anything that was space at that point was, this was in the years immediately after Star Wars being released in 77. You got Alien in 79 during the summer, and that wasn't for kids, so we couldn't see that. So you really had to wait until Empire to see something on a major level again in terms of sci-fi. But in the meantime, you got all these quick, low budget things that were put out to capitalize on Star Wars. As a kid, when Buck Rogers the movie came out, which was in the spring of 79. I actually have the air date as September 20th, 1979.
Well, that's the TV.
That was the theatrical, so they would.
No. That's when the TV show dropped.
Theatrical, correct?
Yeah. So the movie came out in March of 79.
Okay.
So I would have even been 4 then. I wouldn't have turned 5 until August.
But here's the thing: there was no internet or anything like that for especially an 8-year-old to.
No, we had Starlog magazine.
We had Starlog magazine, and you didn't really read those stories until 2 months after the fact that the movie was out in theaters. Yeah. So here we go. Just picture this. Star Wars is out. You see it 2-3 times, however many times you see it, and then it's gone depending on your area if there's theaters still playing it. So then you've got like a dearth of science fiction until the networks decide to come out with a Battlestar or a Buck Rogers. Now, the movie of Buck Rogers comes out in March of 79. To a kid like me, this is a movie. There's no indication to me that this is tied to a series that's coming or that's being thought of or what have you. I go to see this, with my father as a movie. And seeing as it's the first time I've seen a major sci-fi thing outside of Galactica, probably on the big screen, I loved it. And then when September comes around,
what do you mean? It's a TV show?
I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Wait a second. They're doing a TV show of that movie that I saw, and it's the same actors that are in the TV show. Unprecedented. I was probably on my front porch waving the TV guide. I can't believe this is happening. This is like a Star Wars TV show with Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher, coming out 6 months after Star Wars.
You bet your bucks.
And then I'm further confused when the first episode drops and it's the movie that I watched. I'm like, what is going on here? This is some kind of a conspiracy. So it wasn't until years later that I finally figured out the whole story. Okay, the movie was originally filmed as a pilot TV show that was made to sell an eventual TV series. And what they wanted to do was release it theatrically, because they did the same thing with Battlestar to recoup some of those costs that they incurred making this movie. And it was a hit. It cost $3 million to make, which was much more than a normal TV show. And it made $20 million. So they succeeded on that front. So that led NBC to order the TV show. So it was
I'm
all tied
surprised it
together.
cost that much.
But I didn't know that as a kid. I just thought they were two disparate things. And then now all of a sudden there's a TV show and I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah. And they did have to do some creative editing because didn't Tiger Man blow up in the movie?
Tiger Man. So here's the thing is I'm watching this. Now, I haven't seen the Buck Rogers show in eons and eons, probably longer than Buck Rogers was asleep is how long I've seen
500 years. Wow. I'm
this
impressed.
show. And I hear this theme song and suddenly I'm back to being 8 years old again.
Yeah,
yes. The opening. Now I'm sorry, Christina, that you didn't see this. They did not show this on the TV. The opening title sequence of the movie is like a James Bond title sequence.
It's unbelievable. Like I couldn't believe what
I'm
I
like,
was
am I watching like soft porn here? This is
exactly what it was. And you're like, is he dreaming this? Like,
because there's all these
the lead character. It's your lead actress, Erin Gray, rolling around.
Only one of them. There's like
there's
6 or 7 different women that the camera lovingly pans over in slow motion, and they're wearing their silver spacesuits, looking straight at camera, like with their glossy lipstick on. And the song that they're playing is the version of the theme song, but with lyrics. Suspension is what it's called. It's like the Buck Rogers logo, and they're all like sitting very suggestively on a different letter of Buck Rogers.
No, there was I literally wrote "Oh my" in my notes.
And that's why part of the reason why I had to watch what was on Tubi. I'm like, there's no way that they would have shown this on as the opening of the TV show. And that's
so now go back to sitting in the theater with your son. I'm now your dad sitting in that theater watching this opening credits going, oh my, what did I get my kid into? My 8-year-old. Because that Princess Ardala, she's not wearing much.
The first thing I wrote down in my notes, the first thing
I hate you guys.
Well, the first thing I wrote was, this was a movie ? Like in a theater ?
Yeah.
The second thing I wrote was, an awful lot of these characters look like they just left the extras trailer from Flash Gordon.
You are correct. Even the Princess Ardala, what is she in Flash Gordon too? The same character?
Yeah. Which didn't come out until a year later, by the way.
I know, and I did realize that, but the costuming really had
but that's science fiction, that's sci-fi. And you go back to Galactica, which came out before this. They greenlit that, and that was out by the summer of 78, and they did not have titillating women, all the colonial warriors. They're wearing button-up jackets and helmets and stuff like that. But yeah, this is when you got 5 episodes that are all variations on Amazon women. What were some of the titles? Planet of the Slave Girls, Unchained Women, Planet of Amazon Women, and Escape from Wedding Bliss. You know what you're in for. They were really leaning into this soft core. And in the theatrical version, I mean, he drops the S-bomb. He calls Wilma ballsy. Like there's all kinds of stuff.
And wow. Twiki says at one point, I'm freezing my ball bearings off. But in the TV version, he says something about microdiscs or something. It's a different line.
Oh yeah, well that makes sense.
If you've got like a weight in your hands, holiday special, Buck Rogers. Holiday special, Buck Rogers.
Okay, so So I don't know if you remember, but I actually got physically ill during the holiday special.
Yeah. You can't blame the holiday special on that.
You cannot correlate that.
So it's hard for me to say in that sense.
No.
But I will say that this, it sort of like went in one ear and out the other. I was just like, the pacing is so weird. I couldn't figure out, are they trying to build suspense here? There just seemed like there were so many dead moments of storytelling for a thing that was supposed to ostensibly be exciting. It felt really dated. But the funny thing was, I was watching it. My son was not at home, and my husband was in the other room, doing something, and then he walked in, and I had paused it for some reason, and all he saw, it's actually a scene where they're flying into Earth. So all you see is the background and maybe the front of the ship or something. Yeah. And he was like, "Are you watching Buck Rogers?" Yeah.
He was unaware that we were covering Buck Rogers
and
blocked it out.
And then he goes, "This has not aged well."
No.
And he walked out.
Yeah, and it definitely shows its age.
And I was like, yeah, that is the case.
Yeah, but you look at it and it is complete TV land. It looks like TV sets. It's TV.
Yeah, but like you said,
That's
as
why I
an
was
8-year-old
wondering-
watching this,
That's why I was wondering if it had actually been in the theater, because it feels, I mean, it feels like a B movie from the 50s.
Yeah.
You know, it feels
Yeah.
very low budget.
Yeah.
which is what Buck Rogers was anyways. Buck Rogers has been around since the 30s, but you know,
Right.
in the comic books and the Buster Crab serials, which, you know, I think probably took themselves more seriously than what this did. If you go back and watch those, you know, obviously they had cardboard sets. These are not much, but as a kid, like I love these spaceship designs, the Draconian fighters.
Every sci-fi movie in the late 70s has to have that Star Destroyer shot where the ship goes over camera
Wow.
and you see the length, the overwrought music whenever that Draconian ship.
It was a
blah,
very,
blah.
it was very drawn out. It was very, it's very obvious too that manscaping did not exist back then, because this guy's chest hair goes all the way up to his throat.
But yet he's got the haircut of that kid from Stranger Things. He looks like a 12-year-old.
Will, it's coming back in style. Will's going to bring it back. I would have been disappointed seeing this in the theater, but then again, you
I
know,
wasn't
mean,
as a kid. I was not as a kid.
because, yeah, you're not as disciplined in watching something and seeing the production value of it. You just kind
Now,
of accept
this
it
may
for
be
face value.
contentious, what I'm about to say, but I
Uh-oh.
liked Buck better than I did Battlestar Galactica back then.
Battlestar Galactica all the way.
Yeah.
Galactica drop on Sundays at like 7:00. And that was every other weekend I had to go to my dad's. And it was always like this. We need to get home by 7:00. We need to go home by 7:00. That was as much
Sundays at
television
7
to me.
o'clock, I watched Wonderful World at Disney.
When was Hardy Boys on? That was Sunday as
That was
well,
also
wasn't it?
Sunday as well.
The Hardy Boys
or-
Nancy Drew hour, I think it was.
Yeah.
I don't remember what night of the week it was, but the other TV show I remember watching as a kid was Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Oh, I think we all watched.
Oh,
that.
yeah. Yeah.
sure.
But I don't remember
Marlon
what night it
Perkins.
was on.
We haven't mentioned yet. This is the Chicago movie.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a
And I
Chicago
forgot
movie.
about this. That whole, you know, these creatures running around. He goes out to Chicago.
That's the
old
best
Chicago.
part. That's the
That
best
is,
part of the
'cause it's
movie.
scary.
That's Omega Man suddenly.
But I'm like, wait a minute. He goes into Chicago and he's able to find his parents' burial ground, like in all of Chicago. He
Mhm.
figures he finds out exactly where they
Completely easy to do.
are. Yeah.
In a,
Well,
in a city that formerly had millions of people in it.
Mhm.
yes. correct.
And of course, we got Twiki in every single episode.
Twiki. You can't go wrong with Twiki.
And I forgot about the Flavor Flav clock that he had around his
Dr. Theopolis.
Dr. Theopolis.
Why would you create a robot that requires another robot to carry it around? Like Twiki's like, it's kind of beneath me. Like, what? This is
And
my
Twiki
job.
had a very hard time taking it off and putting it on the
No,
table.
they
so
would do
it
some
wasn't-
creative
yeah.
cuts. They would do some creative cuts. I will tell you, I did buy that Felix Silla autographed Twiki picture I found on eBay the other day. I'm like, I have to own this. So this poor guy.
Can you believe that Kurt Russell was their first choice to play Buck Rogers?
I would have loved that.
And he dodged a bullet because he wasn't yet a movie star at that point. So they picked Gil Gerard. They wanted somebody younger. Gil Gerard was a bit older than they had originally envisioned, but he won them over with his charm and the chemistry he had with Aaron Gray.
You think he had to do that disco dance as part of his audition?
That was
Really
the
rocking
worst sequences.
that was
Oh.
That was cringeworthy.
And then Wilma's like, it's
And of course-
disgusting.
Of course, Twiki has to say, "Get down," or whatever he said.
Boogie
you know.
down, Buck. Boogie down.
And this is a bit of a cliche as well, where you have Buck go up to the DJ who has never heard of rock and roll or
Right.
anything. And all Buck has to say, get funky, get loose. And suddenly he's playing exactly what Buck wants to hear.
That's it. You're thinking too hard, my friend. I love the old banana and the tailpipe trick, though. I did like all the gay pride bands that the Earth Force had on their arms. They were ahead of the curve on that one. But like I mentioned, a lot of these props, a lot of these sound effects were just carryover from Galactica. So it boggles my mind that this was to cost $3 million.
Because this was Glenn A. Larson was the producer
Glenn
on
Larson,
both
yeah.
of them.
That's why Galactica didn't last, because it was $1 million an episode. Even though when you watch it now, they reuse like 3/4 of those, those Viper Cylon fights. It's always the same scene. Poor Chicago. Didn't hold up very well over 500 years. Neither did this.
Douglas Rain was the first choice for the voice of Dr. Theopolis. They didn't use him, but he is famous for voicing Hal in 2001.
Oh, I can't do that, Dave.
Hello, Buck.
I did not like the fact that they immediately had Wilma throwing herself at Buck Rogers. And I'm like, I remember her being a very standoff character, like standoffish. Like she was like one of the stronger characters in the 70s. And yet here she is during that dance sequence. She's like, oh, Buck, I like the way you move. I saw that opening credit. So yeah, it does not hold up.
Yeah. Was not reviewed very well. Unsurprisingly. When it came out,
wasn't for the reviewers. The one
I pulled for was from Time Out magazine. Too much time is wasted on Star Wars plagiarisms, including the screen's dullest robot.
Poor Twiki.
Love Mel Blanc, but whenever Twiki speaks, it's like it's complete Looney Tunes. It's like you cannot separate Mel Blanc from Looney Tunes.
No, you had to put the comic sidekick in there. We got that out of our systems.
What kind of buckets would we give for Buck?
I'm gonna give it 3. I'll give it 3 just for the nostalgia of it all.
I'm switching with you for Lightyear. I'm gonna go 2 3/4. Nostalgia, yeah, that I think makes up a solid 2 of those buckets that I've given it is the nostalgia that we have. But Christina has no such tie to it. So let's see.
I have no nostalgia. And, I can't even compare it to my holiday special buckets because I never got a chance to give them because I was sick. So, I don't know. I keep trying to decide if it is worse than Condor Man.
That's a slap across the face.
I mean, it felt... there was definitely a point where, I was... how that thing where it's like you're watching it and you're not taking in what you're looking at all? It's on, but it's just you're not absorbing it. That was the state I was in. I don't know, half a bucket maybe. This is nothing for me. I said,
you sat through it.
I watched it. I mean,
you did.
I knew it meant something to you guys, and I watched it, but this was not in my wheelhouse at that time. I remember, like I said, I remember seeing a couple of reruns at some point during my childhood, and my dad used to do the Twiki voice and tell me that it was from Buck Rogers, but I didn't have any connection to it.
Yeah, I remember I had the Twiki figure, and he came with a little Dr. Theopolis, but you couldn't take it off. It was just molded into Twiki.
That'd be the first thing you'd lose.
Yeah, but I think I got the sticker off first day of Dr. Theopolis.
You're like, that guy's going away.
And Tiger Man had a figure. That's why they had to bring him back for the series, because in the movie, Buck puts a bomb down his pants and shoves him off camera, and then he blows up, but he survives in the TV version.
Yeah, they did the same thing on Galactica too, because they killed off Baltar at the end, slice his throat. Yet he magically returns in the TV show. So. Yeah,
I don't know if I had any of the vehicles for toys, but I definitely had some of these action figures from Buck Rogers.
Some of the better designed ships. Like I said, I was always a big fan of the Draconian fighters. I think Ralph McQuarrie designed a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it's a product of its time.
Definitely.
Something that was thrown together out there for little kids like us. And it is on Tubi, the entire series, right? The entire series. It only ran 2 seasons. And the second season's when you bring in Hawkman.
Hawkman.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And they ended up on a ship. It was almost like a 2001 Discovery ship. They were off the planet.
All right. So what else did we do this week?
I had to manufacture something just so I could talk about it. And I figured since we didn't review Moonfall,
you jumped on the grenade for us?
I did, because it was sitting. I went to go pick up my Scream 4 at the library, and they have a separate rack with the new releases that are only like a 3-day rental. And boom, there it was. And I'm like, do I do this?
All right, before you say this again, Christina, the weight's in your hands. Moonfall, which you haven't even seen, and Buck Rogers.
I don't know. The preview for me.
The idea of Moonfall against the actuality of Buck Rogers.
The trailer for Moonfall looked pretty bad. That is one of those things where they we were watching the trailer and they're spouting kind of this pseudoscientific.
And
you're saying to yourself, I could never suspend my disbelief because it sounds so implausible. It's like
Well, I don't want to ruin it for you, but the moon
You
turns
can
out to
ruin
be
it.
hollow. The moon turns out to be hollow. I will say I got this free at the library and it was not worth it. This was Roland Emmerich. And exactly what you expect. It was just
wait. You lost me at Emmerich. You lost me at Emmerich.
Yeah, well, it did have Sam Tarley from Game of Thrones and Halle Berry. But it's nonsensical. It's jumping on that Independence Day / any one of those Armageddon, but it's goofy. It's things blowing up for the sake of blowing up. There's a horde mentality, hive-minded aliens that are just like these black swarms. It's not good.
Oh, so there's aliens as well as the moon
yes,
being hollow.
Well, that's where the aliens live.
Oh,
of course. Makes perfect sense.
Because
Yes.
the moon is actually this space station that was sent to keep an eye on us.
Oh.
For nefarious purposes.
Do they have an Epcot Center up there and it's Spaceship Moon instead of Spaceship Earth?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The fast pass is still 3 days to get in. Hopefully they'll get shuttles up there soon.
Yeah.
I don't think the moon survived. I don't remember now. I kind of tuned out. You're just talking about kind of watch it, but not watch it. Now that you bring it up, I don't remember how it ended.
You're like you just
I just
like
watched it last
it's
night.
like it's like the visual equivalent of it going in one ear and out the other, right? It's like it went in one eye and out the other. You
Yeah.
didn't even see it. It didn't.
I will say my brother and sister-in-law came up yesterday, so there might have been a couple beers attached to that viewing as well. So there, that I brought something to the table.
I have a feeling every time I talk about what else I did this week, it has to do with the Joe Bob Briggs show because I always watch those. But he had the stepfather on
Terry O'Quinn
with Terry O'Quinn. I probably haven't seen that since the 80s, and it holds up.
Really?
And there's some shocking scenes in that as well, so that I wasn't prepared for. So
I feel like I saw that in the theater. There's no way I probably watched that on VHS.
It's a good one, and he is very menacing and scary, Mr. O'Quinn. So
I liked him on Millennium, if you guys remember that show.
What's that?
Millennium.
Yeah. He was on Millennium.
He was also in Lost. He's actually a very, very famous character actor. He has shown up if you go back. I think he was in the X-Files too. A couple episodes.
You may have been, yeah.
Millennium. That was wasn't that also
Lance Henriksen.
Lance
Henriksen.
Yep.
I loved Millennium.
Yeah,
I really, really did. But they did crazy things by the third season. They didn't know what they wanted to do with the show.
The shark there, yeah.
But I loved that show. Anyway, I watched a TV show, guys.
What?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Tony Hillerman's Jolie Porn and Jim Chi mystery series. And years ago on PBS, they actually did 3 adaptations of the books that starred Wes Studi and Adam Beach, and I actually own them. This is how much I like this series. And I was very excited to discover that AMC is doing a new series based on the books called Dark Winds, starring Zahn McClarnon, who you guys probably would recognize. He's a Native American actor who's been in a ton of stuff. He actually played Echo's dad on Hawkeye, on the Hawkeye TV show.
Yep.
And we watched the first 2 episodes, and it was really, really good. So I'm very, very excited to see where this is going to go.
You said Dark Winds?
It's called Dark Winds. It's on AMC, and it's a mystery series. And I think what's interesting is the first book actually came out in 1970. And they retain that timeline for the TV show. So they haven't tried to update it in any way. Like the show takes place in 1971. So I think that's sort of an interesting choice that they've made for the show.
Next week, we've got a lot of movies coming out. We've had to pick and choose what our schedule is going to be because there's quite a few that we want to cover. But closest to the boat, as they say, is something that we've been talking about for some time now. Black Phone, which is the latest Blumhouse movie starring Ethan Hawke. Audiences have been loving it from what I'm hearing. It's a crowd pleaser.
I'll be the judge of that.
I'm pretty excited. I'm going to see it today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Gonna get right out ahead of the curve here.
And you're probably even more excited about the co-feature that we've chosen.
Oh, yes, I am. Oh, yes, I am. I'm eternally grateful, Jim, for you even bringing this up. Because because we're going to do Scream 4. And if you just mention any Scream movie, that's just an excuse for me to watch all of them. So that's what I'll be doing this week.
Do I need to watch 1, 2, and 3?
I mean, you've seen 1, right?
I'm just asking for the
I
audience.
think that I think 4 especially.
It kind of stands
Yeah,
a
I
little
think
more
it's,
by itself
yeah.
because it's separated in time for the initial trilogy. So I think you can probably get away with not watching, the other ones. I mean, for me, it's just the joy of going back and seeing this franchise that I love. So
Right.
I think you probably could watch it. It might actually help provide some more context to the last film, the last Scream film.
Yeah, I was going to say it's more tied in my mind to the new film than it is to the previous film.
Because Marley Shelton comes back, and she was first introduced in Scream 4. So, and apparently, I don't want to give too much away, but apparently a character from Scream 4 is going to return in the new Scream film that's coming out next year.
Who was sorely lacking from the previous new Scream film?
So I don't want to give it away in case you don't want spoilers, Jim. If you want,
well,
I was going to say,
I don't think that there's anybody I could confuse this to being, so I don't know if it's going to be a spoiler. Now, we've all been seeing that Neve Campbell apparently is not coming back as Sydney for any future, or at least the forthcoming Scream movie. And she's been recast. Not only not coming back, but from what I've read, she's been recast, which I think is a mistake.
I think that's a move. I think that's just a studio move.
I mean, I'm sorry, but
you're gonna recast this character after 6 movies?
She is the iconic character of these films.
Correct.
And I know you guys have heard me sing this song before, but if she was a male actor, whatever she asked, she would have gotten. But because she's a female actor, she's getting told, oh, well, sorry, you're not worth that, even though she's the face of the franchise. And it's, you think about look at how much money Robert Downey Jr. started getting for these Avengers films, even if he showed up for 3.5 seconds. I think that it's a mistake to not give the face of your franchise, a fair salary. And she flat out said in a public statement, I've worked too hard as a woman in this industry to not know my value. This, to me, is just flat out misogyny.
This is akin to recasting Laurie Strode. You can't do it.
Do it.
No. Yeah.
You can't do it.
Interesting. I think it's a power move.
And I think that their power move will fail.
Yeah, I think there will be backlash. Well, I guess we'll have to find out.
Yeah. That's here nor there with Scream 4.
Yeah.
This was made in golden days. So
she is in this one, you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
So next week, Black Phone and Scream 4.
Mm-hmm.
We're back to horror on TMI.
Great. Can't wait.
Do you know the funny thing about this? The fact that you watched Moonfall yesterday was because the initial bargain way back in January, because we didn't have a full schedule then, was that we would watch Moonfall if you watched Black Phone. But now you've told us we have no need to watch Moonfall, but you're still watching Black Phone.
I am Black. Listen, I am. I'll be watching this one solo because there ain't no way in hell my wife will go watch this. I'm gonna have to watch Scream 4 with her out of the room. So, all for the show. Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. If you like what you just heard, be sure to follow TMI Confessionals of the Nerd Kind on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever you listen to your favorite podcasts on. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and then share it with your fellow movie nerd friends. It means the world to us and helps our listenership grow.
You can also find us on all of the socials, Instagram and Twitter at TMI_podcast 2018. We're on Facebook and YouTube as well. Just look for the Popcorn Bucket.
You can help support this show by visiting our TeePublic page for some TMI branded goodies such as hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. TeePublic.com/TMI Confessionals, all one word.
A 5-star review would be incredibly nice as well. I'm just saying.
Thanks again for listening. We truly appreciate you. Be sure to come back next week. We'll save some popcorn for you.
No, Jeff, you got to give us a beady beady so I can put it in the back or the front of the episode.
Beady, 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 beady. That's horrible.
Count down from 5 and do it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Beady, 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 beady.
Okay, that'll have to do.